She was just a quiet woman waiting for a train, her coat wrapped around what looked like a baby bump, until a police dog lunged at her stomach and something fell out that made the entire station scream and scatter. What was meant to be a peaceful morning turned into a race against time, a life or death mystery, and only one four-legged hero saw the danger no one else could. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our global family. Now let's jump into the story. The morning rush at Rose Bay Station was like any other. Echoes of rolling suitcases, the chatter of announcements overhead, and footsteps clacking against tiled floors. Commuters came and went, lost in their routines, coffee cups in hand and phones glowing in their palms. Officer Lucas Hale stood near Platform 9, holding the leash of his K9 partner Ranger, a 6-year-old golden retriever with sharp instincts and a gentle spirit. Ranger wasn't just a dog, he was trained in scent, detection, alert signals, and public safety. After nearly a decade in the force, Lucas trusted Ranger more than he trusted most people. But that morning something was different. The moment they entered the terminal, Ranger tensed. His ears perked and his nose lifted slightly, sniffing the air with purpose. Then he pulled forward, hard. "Whoa, easy there, buddy," Lucas muttered, keeping a firm hand on the leash. But Ranger wasn't distracted. He kept moving, weaving between people, ignoring food wrappers and rolling luggage. His body language shifted, focused, alert. Something wasn't right. Then, near Platform 10, he stopped. A woman sat alone on a wooden bench tucked between two pillars. She looked tired, too tired for the early hour. Her coat was buttoned tightly, around her belly, and her hands rested protectively over a rounded midsection. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, lost in thought, barely noticing the movement around her. Ranger's body went still. His nose pointed straight at the woman's midsection. His ears were flat, and a low rumble came from his throat. Lucas narrowed his eyes. "Ranger, what are you sensing?" The woman looked up, startled. Her voice was small, unsure. "Is everything okay?" Lucas stepped closer, offering a calm smile. "My partner's picking something up. It could be anything. Scent-related. Nothing to worry about. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, just waiting for my train," she said, adjusting her coat. "I'm pregnant. It's a little uncomfortable sitting for too long." "I understand," Lucas said gently. "What's your name?" "Ivy. Ivy Wren." Ranger let out a sharp bark, then another, then a third. Lucas stopped in his tracks. 3 barks. That was Ranger's trained signal, something unusual. Not a threat, not yet, but something that didn't make sense. Lucas felt a chill crawl up his spine. He looked again at Ivy. She was breathing heavier now, clearly frightened. Her hands clutched her bag tightly, and her fingers trembled. "Ivy," he said softly, "can I ask you to stand up? Just for a moment. We're not accusing you of anything. My dog just needs to check something out." Ivy hesitated, fear flashing across her face. "Is he going to bite me?" "No," Lucas said quickly. "He's not trained to bite unless given a command. But he is telling me he's very concerned about something. Please." She rose slowly, one hand on her belly. As she moved, Ranger's body lowered into a crouch, his eyes locked on her midsection. Then, without warning, he jumped. Gasps erupted from the surrounding crowd. A coffee cup crashed to the floor. A woman shrieked and ducked behind a bench. But Ranger didn't growl. He didn't bark. He didn't bite. He simply leapt and tapped Ivy's stomach with his snout. Something fell from beneath her coat. It hit the ground with a metallic clink. Lucas stepped forward fast, grabbing Ranger's collar and pulling him gently back. Lying between them was a small, cylindrical object wrapped in black tape. It wasn't a phone, it wasn't keys. It didn't belong in a coat pocket or anywhere near a pregnant belly. Ivy stared at it, frozen. What is that?" Lucas didn't answer. He crouched down, carefully examining the object without touching it. His training kicked in. Unidentified, taped, cylindrical. These were warning signs. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Hale. I need bomb unit and crowd control at Rose Bay Station, Platform 10. Possible device detected. Civilian appears unaware. Scene secure for now." Ranger stood tall next to Ivy, eyes never leaving the object. He didn't growl. Instead, he placed himself gently between her and the crowd, guarding her. Lucas looked up at Ivy, her face now pale as paper. "Ivy," he said carefully, "did you know that was there?" She shook her head slowly, tears already building in her eyes. "No, I didn't even know something was under my coat." Lucas believed her. There was too much confusion in her face. Too much fear. He looked at Ranger again. The dog hadn't attacked. He had protected. From what, they didn't know yet. But Lucas could feel it in his bones. This wasn't over. The train station had changed in an instant. Where moments before there had been chatter, clattering luggage, and yawning commuters, now there was only a tense, strange silence. An open space had formed around Ivy Wren, and all eyes were locked on her. But not because of her. Because of what had fallen from her coat. A small, dark object. Taped. Cylindrical. Lying on the cold platform like it didn't belong in the real. World. Officer Lucas Hale stood with his hand gently resting on Ranger's collar. The golden retriever remained alert, standing like a guard between Ivy and everyone else. Not aggressive, not afraid, just waiting. "I swear, I don't know what that is," Ivy whispered, her voice barely holding together. "I believe you," Lucas replied calmly, "but I still need you to stay very still." Within minutes, backup had arrived. Officer Delia Moore, a sharp-eyed bomb technician with years of field experience, made her way toward them, gear strapped to her chest, scanner in hand. "Lucas," she said quietly, "you did the right thing calling this in. That device? It's not something someone drops by accident." Ranger found it. He alerted before she even stood up. Moore nodded, looking at the woman. "You're Ivy, right?" Ivy nodded, hugging her coat tighter around her midsection. "I didn't put anything there, I promise." "Let's just check, okay?" Moore said gently. "This scanner won't hurt you. Just checking for anything unusual." She began sweeping, the device slowly around Ivy's coat, eyes locked on the screen. Ranger's ears twitched. He was focused, reading every small sound, every movement. He didn't growl, but his body stayed tense. The scanner beeped once, then again. Moore frowned. "There's something under the coat," she said. "Strapped close to the body. Multiple materials, wires, maybe metal." Ivy's lip trembled. "It's a support belt. My husband said I should wear one for the baby." Moore glanced at Lucas. "Support belts don't beep like this." Lucas spoke calmly. "Ivy, where's your husband now?" "He dropped me off. He said he'd meet me in Washington later, today. He has some security job downtown." "Has he ever given you anything like this before?" Moore asked. "No," she replied. "He said it was for safety, for me, for the baby." Moore looked again at the scanner. "This isn't safety, Ivy." Ivy blinked hard, fighting the tears. "He said he loved me." Lucas softened his voice. Sometimes people use love to hide their real plans. A ripple of motion passed through the station as more officers arrived to move bystanders away. The area around the bench was cleared. Medical staff stood by, unsure if they were needed. Nobody dared move too quickly. Moore ran another scan, then stopped. "There's more. A separate component. Could be a transmitter. Could be wired. Could be active." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Is it dangerous?" "We won't know until we get a full team in here," Moore replied. "But yes, it could be." Ivy's knees buckled. She sat slowly on the bench, her breathing uneven. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought he was being overprotective. He said it was padded, to support the baby. I didn't even question it." Lucas crouched beside her. "We're going to get through this, just stay calm. You're not under arrest, you're not in trouble, but we need to keep you still." Ranger stepped closer. He placed himself directly in front of Ivy again, this time pressing his side gently to her leg. She flinched at first, then slowly reached out and laid her hand on his fur. He's not afraid of me, she said, almost to herself. He knows you're not the problem, Lucas said. He's trying to protect you. She looked down at the dog. I didn't even know I needed protecting. Just then a low beep came from Moore's gear. Scanners picking up a faint energy pulse, she said. That could mean the device has a power source. Ivy stared at her coat like it was suddenly a stranger on her body. You think it's a bomb? We're not jumping to conclusions, Moore replied quickly. But we have to take precautions. Ivy's breathing grew heavier, her eyes unfocused. I don't feel well. Then her body tilted to the side, her eyes rolled back. Ivy! Lucas called, catching her before she fell fully. We need a medic. Paramedics rushed in, careful not to move her too quickly. They worked around the straps of her coat, unsure what they could touch. Ranger whined softly, pacing beside her, eyes never leaving her face. She's breathing, one medic confirmed. But she's passed out, likely stress-induced. Lucas stayed beside her, watching everything unfold. She really didn't know, he whispered to Moore. I think you're right, she replied, which means whoever did this used her. Lucas looked down at the object still lying on the ground, untouched and silent, yet louder than anything else in the station. This was meant for something, or someone, he said. And deep in his gut he knew they had only scratched the surface. The skies over Rose Bay Station had turned cloudy. Inside, the platform remained empty except for officers, bomb techs, and a small group of shaken medics. Ivy Wren lay on her side, barely conscious, with her coat still fastened tightly across her stomach. Ranger sat beside her, silent, his body still and alert. Officer Lucas Hale stood close, trying to stay calm as new questions flooded his mind. How had she ended up in the middle of this? Why had Ranger, of all dogs, sensed something no one else could, and most of all, who had put the device on her? Agent Malik Darrow, a federal investigator with quiet eyes and a reputation for connecting impossible dots, stepped onto the platform. He didn't waste time. He crouched beside Lucas and looked toward the woman. This is the one? Lucas nodded. Ivy Wren. She says her husband strapped it to her, told her it was for the baby. She didn't know what it was? No, I believe her. So does my dog. Malik looked at Ranger, who met his gaze without moving. That dog's got better judgment than most people. A tech approached, holding a laptop. Agent Darrow, we ran a background check on the name she gave. Jordan. Wren. Nothing solid. No marriage license, no employment records under that name. The address she listed is tied to a rental under a fake ID. Lucas turned back to Ivy, who had just begun to stir. Her eyes fluttered open, confused and frightened. Ivy, Lucas said gently, kneeling beside her. We need to ask you a few questions. I know this is overwhelming, but we think someone's been lying to you. She blinked slowly. Jordan. He's my husband. Have you ever seen his ID? Met his family? Do you know where he works? Who he talks to? No, she said, struggling to sit up. He always said it was better that way. He said his job was private, that it was for national security. He said not to ask questions. Lucas and Malik exchanged a glance. That phrase had become too familiar. He said wearing the belt would protect the baby, she whispered. That it was specially made. I believed him. I didn't think he'd ever. Her voice cracked and she couldn't finish. Meanwhile, Ranger's ears twitched. His head turned suddenly toward the far end of the platform, toward the wide glass doors leading to the parking garage. Then he growled, not a soft grumble, a deep, low, warning growl. What is it, boy? Lucas said, following his gaze. A figure stood beyond the doors, a man in a dark hoodie. He wasn't moving. He was just watching Ivy. Ranger barked once, sharp and loud. The man flinched. Then he moved. Fast. Go! Lucas shouted. Ranger lunged. Lucas followed. The team bolted through the doors as the man turned, sprinting across the garage. He didn't get far. Ranger caught up first, not at the man's throat, but at his hand, the one holding a phone. The dog slammed into him with perfect aim. The phone flew from the man's grip and skidded across the pavement. The man reached toward his waistband. "Gun!" someone yelled, but he didn't get the chance to draw it. Ranger knocked him down, pinning him with both paws across his chest. Officers swarmed in, weapons drawn, handcuffs clicked shut. The man screamed but didn't fight back. He was caught, and he knew it. Lucas stepped over and picked up the phone. The screen was cracked, but one thing was clear. An app was open. A timer. Paused. Ready to activate. Back on the platform, Ivy had collapsed again, this time from fear more than exhaustion. Paramedics rushed to stabilize her while the bomb team worked on the device strapped to her body. A technician named Alvarez examined the straps. "This isn't a bomb vest," he said to Malik. "It's something new, smaller, wrapped carefully. Most of it's designed to hide the actual payload." "What's the core function?" Malik asked. "Directional blast," Alvarez said grimly. "Small but powerful, enough to injure or kill everyone within 20 feet. The blast would push outward. Ivy likely would have survived." Malik shook his head. So she was the delivery method, without ever knowing it. Back in the garage, the man was being loaded into a police van. He gave no name, no answers, but they had his face, his fingerprints, and most importantly, his failure. Because of Ranger, because of one dog who saw what others couldn't. That night, Ivy was taken to the hospital. She was safe but shaken. Lucas stayed with her until she fell asleep. Ranger never left her side. The truth was starting to come out. The man she thought loved her had never loved her at all. He had used her, but he hadn't succeeded because someone else, a four-legged partner, had refused to walk past a lie disguised as a bump. Weeks passed since the day everything changed at Rose Bay Station. The news cycle moved on, but for Ivy Wren, time had slowed to a crawl. She was staying in a quiet house outside the city, far from the noise of trains and busy platforms. A friend of her late mother had offered her a place to rest. Ivy hadn't gone back to the apartment she once shared with the man she thought was her husband. She couldn't. Not now. Not ever. She was safe, but nothing felt the same. The shock of what had happened still lingered in her bones. The idea that the man who said he loved her had lied to her about everything. It ran deep. Her mind replayed it all at night. The train station, the metal object, the blinking light. But most of all, she remembered one thing clearly. Ranger. The golden retriever had stayed beside her during it all. When others looked at her with suspicion, when she felt most alone, he had stood between her and the world, not to attack, but to protect. She hadn't seen him since the hospital, but that changed one quiet afternoon. A car pulled into the driveway. Ivy opened the door and stepped onto the porch. She gasped when she saw Lucas Hale stepping out, holding a familiar leash. Ranger's tail wagged instantly when he saw her. "I didn't know if you were ready," Lucas said, giving her a small smile. "But Ranger, he kept walking to your hospital room every day after you left. He wouldn't stop until I said we'd visit." Ivy knelt down as Ranger trotted toward her, his eyes bright, his movements careful but joyful. "I missed you," she whispered, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You saved me. I don't know how you knew, but you did." Lucas stood nearby, watching quietly. "I think he just listened," he said. He heard something no one else did. They talked for a while on the porch, about the case, about the charges filed, and about how much Ivy's life had changed. Jordan Wren, whose real name was still under investigation, had been linked to a domestic extremist group. Authorities believed Ivy had been his test run. She had no idea. But that test failed, Lucas said. Thanks to him. Ranger had since been retired from active duty, not because he was too old, he wasn't, but because, as Lucas explained, some dogs finish their job in one perfect moment. He made a choice that day, Lucas added. Not just to follow a scent, but to protect someone who needed him. Ivy looked down at Ranger. Then maybe, if it's okay, with you, he could stay here. Lucas paused. Ranger sat beside Ivy's feet, his body completely at ease for the first time in weeks. He already has, Lucas said with a smile. And just like that, Ranger had a new home. The days that followed were quiet, peaceful. Ivy began to feel like herself again, stronger, calmer, and not alone. Ranger followed her everywhere, to the kitchen while she made tea, to the garden where she sat and read, and even to the baby's room, which she had just begun to prepare again. Because yes, the baby was real, safe, healthy, and every time she placed a hand on her growing belly, she whispered, "We're okay because of you." At night, when Ivy sometimes woke from dreams filled with alarms and blinking lights, Ranger was already beside her bed. His head would rest on the edge of the mattress, his eyes calm and watching. One morning, Ivy sat in the nursery folding tiny clothes. She looked down at her stomach and smiled. "His name will be Noah," she said softly. "And he's going to grow up knowing that heroes don't always carry badges. Some carry tennis balls and walk on 4 legs. Months later, Noah was born on a quiet, snowy evening. The birth was long and exhausting, but when she finally held him in her arms, Ivy cried tears she'd held back for too long. She had made it. Her baby had made it. They were whole again. The day she returned home from the hospital, Ranger was waiting by the door. He sniffed the baby gently, then laid down beside the crib as if he had always belonged there. And in a way, he had. Time passed. Noah grew. Ranger aged. His face grayed, and his walks became slower. But his eyes never changed. He remained Ivy's silent protector, her reminder of how close she'd come to losing everything, and how deeply she had been saved. One summer evening, Ivy sat on a blanket outside as the sun dipped below the trees. Noah, now a toddler, was chasing fireflies across the yard. When he tripped, Ranger was there first, helping him stand, licking the tears before they could fall. Ivy watched with tears in her eyes. "Still guarding us," she whispered. Later that year, she framed a photo above the fireplace, one of Ranger lying beneath the crib, Noah fast asleep above, and written below it were simple words that said everything. Not all heroes speak, some simply stay.